The atmospheric sensors started screaming their warnings around 18:00 station time. Ethan Cross glanced up from his dinner, rehydrated pasta that was somehow both bland and aggressively salty, and checked the weather display projected on his habitat wall. Bad, very bad. Electrical storm rolling in from the eastern highlands, bigger than anything he'd seen in 3 months of solitary survey work on Theta 7. The readings showed electromagnetic activity that would fry unprotected equipment and cook organic tissue within minutes of exposure. Great, Ethan muttered, abandoning his meal to secure the habitat. He'd been through a dozen storms during his posting, but this one looked particularly violent. Time to batten down and wait it out. He sealed the outer doors, activated the electromagnetic shielding, checked that all his survey equipment was safely inside or rated for extreme weather. The habitat was designed for exactly this: reinforced structure that could withstand Theta 7's worst atmospheric tantrums while keeping its occupants safe and relatively comfortable. The storm hit with impressive fury. Lightning that wasn't quite lightning, more like atmospheric discharge that turned the sky purple and white, cracked overhead constantly. Wind that wasn't quite wind, more like pressure differentials that could tear equipment from its moorings, howled around the habitat's curved walls. Ethan had learned not to watch. The display of raw planetary violence was beautiful, but also deeply unsettling. He was settling in with a book, actual paper book, shipped at great expense because 3 months alone required old-fashioned comfort, when he heard something over the storm's roar. Impact against his outer door. Not debris. Ethan had learned to distinguish the random percussion of storm-tossed material from deliberate contact. This was rhythmic, purposeful, someone pounding. That was impossible. Ethan was alone on Theta 7, the only human installation on a moon undergoing preliminary atmospheric surveys before terraforming consideration. He hadn't been notified of any incoming personnel. Ships didn't land during storms like this, too dangerous, too likely to get fried by atmospheric discharge. But the pounding continued, desperate, insistent. Someone was outside in a storm that would kill them within minutes. Ethan didn't hesitate. He ran to the airlock controls, overriding the safety protocols that insisted opening the outer door during active storm was suicidally stupid. If someone was outside, they were dying. Seconds mattered. The outer door cracked open, and a figure stumbled into the airlock. Tall, definitely not human even through the environmental suit. The airlock cycled automatically, but Ethan could see their suits smoking from electrical damage, systems failing, movement becoming sluggish. When the inner door opened, the figure collapsed forward. Ethan caught them, his shorter human frame struggling with their height and weight, dragging them inside and sealing the door behind them. Their suit was badly damaged, multiple breach points, life support failing, helmet's faceplate cracked. "Hold on," Ethan said, reaching for the helmet releases. "I'm getting you out of this thing." The helmet came off and Ethan froze. Velkari. He was looking at a Velkari woman, unmistakable with those long, elegant ears now flat against her head, silver eyes wide with pain and shock, skin shifting through colors that might mean distress or injury or both. The Velkari were isolationists, claiming vast territories and responding to intrusions with overwhelming military force. Humanity had minimal contact with them, and what contact existed was tense at best, openly hostile at worst. And one of them had just crashed into his habitat during a storm. She stared at him, and he watched realization hit as she registered what he was. "Human," she whispered, the word translated by her suit's damaged but still functional system. Her hand moved toward what was definitely a weapon holstered at her hip, then stopped. She was badly injured, burns visible on her arms and exposed neck where the suit had failed, her breathing labored, her whole body trembling with shock and pain. She needed medical attention immediately. She was also staring at him like he was a threat, her ears angled in expressions Ethan's basic xenobiology knowledge identified as fear and aggression mixed together. "You're hurt," Ethan said slowly, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. "I'm not going to harm you. You need medical treatment. Please let me help you." She didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched him with those silver eyes while her damaged suit continued failing, and her injuries clearly worsened by the second. Ethan made a decision. "I'm coming closer. I'm a medic, basic training, but I know how to treat burns and shock. I'm going to help you whether you want it or not, because letting you die in my habitat isn't an option I can live with. If you're going to shoot me for helping, do it after I've stopped your immediate bleeding." He moved carefully, watching for any sign she'd actually draw the weapon. She didn't. Her hand fell away from the holster, though her eyes tracked his every movement with wary intensity. Her suit's medical readout was still functional, displayed vital signs and biological data that Ethan's medical kit could interpret. Velkari physiology was similar enough to human that his emergency supplies should work. Burns first, then shock treatment, then assessment of other injuries. "This is going to hurt," Ethan warned, pulling out regenerative gel and sterile bandages. "But it's better than dying. Try not to shoot me while I work." He started with the worst burns on her arms, second-degree equivalent where electrical discharge had overwhelmed her suit's protection. The regenerative gel lit up with biological activity as it interfaced with her chemistry, and she hissed with pain but didn't pull away. "What's your name?" Ethan asked while working, trying to keep her conscious and focused. "I'm Ethan. Ethan Cross, survey engineer. Been alone on this moon for 3 months doing atmospheric analysis. You're my first visitor." She didn't answer immediately, her breathing harsh and irregular. Then quietly, "Kaya." "Nice to meet you, Kaya. Wish it was under better circumstances." He moved to treating burns on her neck, trying to be gentle with clearly sensitive tissue. "What were you doing out in that storm? Your ship crash?" Yes, the word was forced. Systems failed. Navigation error, caught in discharge field, emergency landing, barely survived impact. And then you ran for shelter in a storm that should have killed you within minutes. Ethan finished treating her visible burns and started checking for internal injuries with his medical scanner. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "Both," she managed, and Ethan thought there might have been a hint of humor in the word. "I can work with both." He checked the scanner readouts. No immediate life-threatening internal damage, though she'd need rest and proper medical care beyond his field kit's capabilities. "You're going to live, which is good because I'd hate to have saved you from the storm just to lose you to shock." She was watching him with less obvious hostility now, though her ears remained angled with wariness. "Why you help? I am enemy. My people would kill you for being in claimed space." "We're not in claimed space. Theta 7 is unclaimed territory under the Horizon Accords. I have legal right to be here." Ethan covered her with a thermal blanket from his emergency supplies. "And you're not my enemy right now. Right now you're an injured person who needed shelter. That's all that matters." "Humans are strange," she muttered, but her eyes were already closing with exhaustion and shock catching up to her. "Probably," Ethan agreed. "Rest now. Storm should pass in a few hours. We'll figure out the rest when you're not dying." She drifted into unconscious sleep, and Ethan sat back, looking at the Velkari woman currently occupying his habitat's emergency cot. He just saved the life of someone whose people considered humans invaders. She could still shoot him when she woke, could call her people and have him arrested or killed, could turn his act of mercy into diplomatic disaster. "Well," Ethan told his empty habitat, "this is either going to be the best decision I've made or the absolute worst. No middle ground here." The storm raged outside, and Ethan settled in to keep watch over his unexpected, potentially dangerous, definitely complicated guest. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 long, tense days trapped in close quarters with an injured Velkari woman who alternated between suspicious wariness and reluctant acceptance of his medical care. Kaya's condition improved steadily. The burns healed under regenerative treatment, her breathing normalized, her strength returned. But the tension remained. Two members of mutually hostile species sharing space barely large enough for one, neither able to leave while the storm raged outside. They learned to navigate each other. Ethan gave her space, moved slowly, kept his tone neutral and non-threatening. Kaya watched him constantly, her long ears tracking his movements, her hand never far from her weapon though she never actually drew it. On the second day she finally spoke beyond monosyllables. "Why you help?" she asked while he changed her bandages. "I am enemy. My people would kill you for being in claimed space." "I told you before, we're not in claimed space. This moon is unclaimed territory under." "I heard your words." Her ears angled with frustration. "But you must know Velkari consider this sector ours regardless of your human accords. We do not recognize your expansion. You are invader whether your laws say otherwise. Then your people should file proper claims under interstellar law, instead of just declaring vast territories off-limits and shooting anyone who gets close." Ethan applied fresh regenerative gel more firmly than necessary. "You can't claim space you're not using and expect everyone else to honor undefined boundaries." Her ears flattened anger. "You know nothing of Velkari history. Of the species that tried to genocide us, that we survived only by claiming space and defending it absolutely. We learned the hard way that letting others close means dying. And now you're so traumatized by your history that you kill anyone who gets near, even when they have no hostile intent." Ethan met her silver eyes directly. "That's not strength, Kaya. That's fear. You're so afraid of being destroyed that you destroy first, and you call it defense. You dare." "I dare because I'm treating your injuries while you sit in my habitat threatening me with your weapon." His voice was sharp. "I pulled you out of a storm that would have killed you, provided medical care, shared my food and shelter, and you're still treating me like I'm the enemy. So yes, I dare to speak honestly because at this point, what else can you do to me?" She was silent for a long moment, her ears cycling through complex patterns. Then quietly, "You are right. I apologize. You have shown me unexpected kindness. I should not repay it with hostility." "Apology accepted." Ethan finished with her bandages. "And I'm sorry for being harsh. This situation is stressful for both of us." They settled into uneasy truce after that. Shared meals in silence, occupied opposite ends of the habitat, avoided conversations that led to arguments. But proximity forced familiarity. Ethan learned she was reconnaissance pilot, mapping human expansion into territories Velkari considered theirs. She learned he was civilian contractor, sent to isolated posts because he preferred solitude to crowded stations. "You choose to be alone?" Kaya asked on day 2, surprised enough to initiate conversation. "Your people do not force isolation as punishment." "No punishment. I volunteered for solo survey work." Ethan prepared food she could eat based on her suit's nutritional database. "I'm not great with crowds. Too much noise, too many expectations. I like the quiet, like having control over my environment and schedule. Solo posts are perfect for me. Velkari would not choose such isolation. We value community, collective decision-making. Being alone is." She searched for words. "Uncomfortable, wrong. Different species, different preferences." He set food within her reach. "But we share survival instinct. You crashed, sought shelter, trusted a stranger because alternative was death. That's universal. I did not trust you. I had no choice. And yet you're still alive because you chose survival over prejudice. That's something." Ethan started eating his own meal. "Your people might not approve, but you made smart decision. Living with enemy help is better than dying with ideological purity intact." She almost smiled. Her ears angled forward slightly, amusement maybe or acknowledgement of the point. "You are strange for human. Our intelligence briefings describe your people as arrogant, aggressive, dismissive of other species' concerns. You are none of these things. Your intelligence briefings are probably as biased as ours about Velkari. We're told you're paranoid isolationists who shoot first and never bother with questions. You haven't shot me yet, so maybe both our peoples are wrong about each other. Perhaps she considered her food carefully before eating. Thank you for accommodation of my dietary needs. Many species would not bother. You're welcome. Seems like bare minimum when hosting unexpected guests. They fell into more comfortable routine after that. Conversation came easier. She told him about Velkari culture, about their history of near extinction and the defensive paranoia that followed. He told her about human expansion, about overpopulation pressures that drove exploration and colonization. We're not so different, Ethan observed one evening while the storm continued raging outside. Both our species have trauma that drives our behavior. Yours makes you defensive and isolated. Mine makes us expansionist and aggressive. We're both reacting to fear, just in opposite directions. Your species doesn't seem afraid, Kaya countered. You push into everything without hesitation, claim territories without concern for existing inhabitants. Because we're afraid of being trapped, of running out of room and resources like we nearly did on Earth. Expansion is our survival instinct. Find more space before we suffocate in what we have. It's not malicious. It's desperation disguised as boldness. She was quiet for a long time, her ears angling through thoughtful patterns. I had not considered that perspective. Our briefings present humans as arrogant conquerors, not desperate survivors seeking room to breathe. And our briefings present Velkari as paranoid aggressors, not traumatized defenders protecting space they need to feel safe. Ethan met her eyes. Maybe both our peoples are wrong about each other. Maybe we're both just scared species, trying to survive the best way we know how. Perhaps, her ears angled with what might have been respect. You have given me much to consider, Ethan Cross. On day 3, the storm finally broke. The sensors showed clearing atmospheric conditions, safe electromagnetic levels, visibility returning. Kaya could leave. Should leave. The longer she stayed, the more likely human authorities would detect her presence and create diplomatic incident. But she hesitated at the airlock, fully suited and ready to depart, her ears cycling through complex patterns Ethan was learning to read. Conflict. Uncertainty. Something else he couldn't quite identify. Thank you, she said formally, for saving my life, for healing my injuries, for treating me as person rather than enemy, for conversations that challenged assumptions I held as unquestionable truth. I will remember this. You're welcome, Ethan meant it. Safe travels, Kaya. Try not to crash in any more storms. I will endeavor to avoid that fate. She turned to leave, then stopped, turned back. Ethan Cross, if our peoples were not enemies, I believe we could have been friends. You have character I respect, courage to help without expectation of reward, willingness to question your own biases, capacity for kindness to those who do not deserve it. These are rare qualities in any species. Thanks. You're not so bad yourself once you stop pointing weapons at me. He smiled to show he was joking. If circumstances were different, yeah, I think we could have been friends. She nodded, her ears angling with something like sadness, and left through the airlock. Ethan watched her cross the storm-scarred landscape toward her crashed ship, her figure growing smaller until she disappeared over a ridge. He was alone again. The habitat felt emptier than before she arrived. 3 days of forced companionship had been stressful but also significant, important. He'd learned more about Velkari culture from direct conversation with Kaya than from months of intelligence briefings. And he'd miss her, which was stupid. She was potential enemy who'd threatened him repeatedly. But he'd miss the conversations, the cultural exchange, the challenge of bridging species differences through forced proximity. Back to solitary surveys, Ethan told his empty habitat. At least it won't be boring. Can't wait to explain this in my next report. He turned back to his equipment, ready to resume the routine that had been his life for 3 months. Then he heard footsteps. turned to find Kaya standing in his airlock again, her helmet off, her ears angled with expression he finally recognized. Hope mixed with fear, decision mixed with doubt. Or, she said quietly, "You could come with me." What? Ethan was certain he'd misheard. The storm must have damaged his ears or his brain. People leave you in solitude that would drive most beings to psychological instability. You have skills that would be valued in Velkari territory. Engineering expertise, diplomatic capability, the ability to see past species prejudice that most cannot manage. You could come with me, not as prisoner but as guest, advisor, perhaps something more if you chose. Your people would kill me the moment I set foot in Velkari space, Ethan said, his brain struggling to process what she was suggesting. You said yourself, Velkari see humans as invaders, threats, enemies to be eliminated. Why would they tolerate me? Because I have rank and influence within Reconnaissance Command. Because Velkari law recognizes life debt. You saved me, which creates obligation and protection under our customs. Because I would claim you as my responsibility, my charge, and any who harmed you would answer to me personally. Her silver eyes held his with startling intensity. I could protect you. And after 5 days of observing your character, your competence, your capacity for seeing individuals rather than just species categories, I believe you would not merely survive among Velkari but potentially thrive. You understand isolation. You respect boundaries. You value competence over appearance. These are qualities my people prize highly, even if they claim to hate your species. You're serious? Ethan stared at her, searching for any sign this was elaborate joke or trap. You're actually asking me to abandon my survey post and fly into hostile territory with someone I met 5 days ago during an electrical storm? Yes. She moved closer, her ears angled forward with determination mixed with something softer. Because these 5 days have shown me something I did not expect to discover. Humans can be honorable. You specifically can be trusted. You have integrity that transcends species loyalty. And I find I do not wish to say goodbye and never see you again when saying goodbye is not actually necessary. Kaya, Ethan's voice caught. Even if I wanted to, and I'm not saying I do, I have a contract, obligations to the survey company, responsibilities I can't just abandon because an alien I saved from a storm asked me to run away with her. Your contract confines you to isolated moon for 6 more months with no human contact, performing work that automated systems could accomplish equally well. You told me yourself. You took this assignment because you prefer solitude to crowded stations. But there is difference between chosen solitude and enforced isolation, between having space to yourself and having no one at all. Her ears angled with something like concern. I watched you during our days together. You are lonely, Ethan Cross. You hide it well, bury it under routines and work, and pretending isolation is preference rather than resignation. But I see it, and I am offering alternative. Come with me. See Velkari space. Meet my people as individual rather than enemy representative. Perhaps help bridge the gap between our species that diplomats have failed to cross for generations. Perhaps, her ears flattened with obvious embarrassment, perhaps simply spend time with someone who understands what it means to be separate from your people, even when surrounded by them. Ethan wanted to refuse, should refuse. This was insane on every possible level. Abandoning his post would break his contract, potentially end his career in survey work. Going to Velkari space was dangerous. Their military might decide he was spy or threat regardless of Kaya's protection. And even if he survived the political implications, there was the simple fact that he was considering leaving everything familiar to fly into unknown territory with someone he'd known less than a week. But he was also thinking about 6 more months of absolute solitude on Theta 7, about the creeping loneliness he'd been ignoring, the way conversations with automated systems had started feeling almost real because he needed interaction so badly. about how alive he'd felt during these 5 days with Kaya, even with the tension and danger and mutual suspicion, about how empty the habitat felt now that she was preparing to leave. "This is completely insane," Ethan said slowly. "Probably going to get me killed or arrested or cause diplomatic incident that sets back human Velkari relations for generations. I'll lose my job, my reputation, possibly my freedom. Every rational part of my brain is screaming that this is a terrible idea." "Yes," Kaya agreed, her ears angled forward with cautious hope. "All those consequences are entirely possible and perhaps even likely. I cannot guarantee your safety or that this decision will not destroy aspects of your life you value. I can only promise that I will dedicate myself to protecting you and that you will experience things no other human has seen. That the risk might yield rewards impossible to achieve through caution." Ethan thought about the life he'd built, safe, predictable, isolated. Thought about the person he'd been before this storm, before Kaya crashed into his habitat and forced him to see beyond his comfortable solitude. Thought about the choice he was facing and realized it wasn't really about rationality or safety or career concerns. It was about whether he had courage to choose possibility over certainty, connection over isolation, living over merely existing. "I need to secure the habitat," he said, making decision that felt simultaneously insane and inevitable. "Set it to automatic monitoring so the survey company doesn't panic when I don't check in. Gather my essential equipment. Leave message explaining I'm taking emergency leave due to circumstances beyond my control, which is technically accurate even if wildly incomplete." Kaya's ears shot straight up with joy, and for first time since he'd met her, she smiled, genuine expression of delight that transformed her entire face. "You're coming with me, truly." "I'm going to regret this," Ethan said, already moving to pack his critical gear. "But yes, I'm coming with you, taking absolutely insane risk, choosing uncertainty over safety, probably destroying my career and possibly my life. But you saved my life by seeking shelter here, and I saved yours by providing it. We've kept each other alive for 5 days through cooperation and mutual respect despite every reason to be enemies. That has to mean something. That has to be worth exploring rather than just walking away from." "It means we are bound by shared survival," Kaya said quietly, watching him pack with obvious relief and pleasure. "By seeing each other as individuals rather than enemy representatives. By choosing connection over fear that our peoples have elevated to ruling principle. By recognizing that sometimes the most important decisions are made despite logic rather than because of it." Ethan packed quickly and efficiently. Clothes, personal effects, his technical equipment, data storage containing his survey work. Left automated message for his supervisor explaining that he was taking emergency leave due to first contact situation requiring immediate attention, which was accurate enough without revealing full insanity of what he was doing. Set the habitat to secure mode that would alert company if anyone tried to access it, but otherwise maintain standard operations. 20 minutes later, he was sealing the habitat behind him and following Kaya across storm-damaged landscape toward her crashed ship. The walk took nearly an hour over rough terrain, and Ethan used the time to process the enormity of what he was doing. He was leaving everything familiar, walking away from his contract and career, entering hostile territory with only Kaya's promise of protection between him and potential execution, and he felt more alive than he had in years. Kaya's ship was small but elegant, its design clearly more advanced than human equivalents. Streamlined hull that looked organic rather than constructed, technology that seemed to blur line between machine and living thing. Ethan ran his hand over the surface and felt it respond to his touch, warming slightly, as if recognizing new presence. "She's beautiful," he said honestly. "Your ship, she's incredible. She is called Dancing Through Storms in your language. She has been my companion for 7 years of reconnaissance work. She will welcome you aboard if you treat her with respect." Kaya entered through seamless opening that appeared at her approach. Come, I will show you quarters and begin teaching you protocols for surviving in Velkari space without causing immediate international incident. The ship's interior was even more impressive than exterior. Organic curves, bioluminescent lighting that adjusted to their presence, controls that seemed to respond to thought as much as touch. Kaya showed him to small but comfortable quarters adjacent to her own, explained basic systems, taught him emergency procedures in case of attack or malfunction. We will reach Velkari territorial boundary in approximately 18 hours, she said once he was settled. You should rest. When we arrive, events will move quickly, and you will need all your mental resources for navigating first contact with my command structure without saying anything that gets you immediately arrested or killed. That's encouraging, Ethan said dryly. Any specific advice for not getting killed? Don't mention human expansion plans. Don't suggest Velkari territory claims are excessive or unreasonable. Don't imply that human-Velkari conflict could be resolved through simple negotiation, because we are deeply stubborn people who see compromise as weakness. And most importantly, defer to me in all interactions. You are under my protection, which grants you status. But that status is contingent on you behaving as appropriate for someone in my care, rather than independent agent with opinions. So basically, keep quiet and let you do the talking. Essentially, yes, at least initially. Once they accept your presence, you may have more freedom, but first impressions with Velkari are critical and permanent. We do not give second chances to those who demonstrate incompatibility with our values. Her ears angled with concern. I will protect you, Ethan, but you must also protect yourself by being careful with your words and actions. Velkari society is complex, ritualistic, unforgiving of cultural violations. You must learn quickly, or you will not survive regardless of my advocacy. Understood, I'll follow your lead. Ethan met her eyes seriously. Thank you for this, for asking me to come, for being willing to take risk on someone you barely know. This is possibly the most insane thing I've ever done, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you for accepting despite very legitimate concerns about safety and rationality. She moved toward the door, then paused. Ethan, I am glad you came. Even if events unfold poorly, even if my people reject your presence, I am glad I asked and grateful you accepted. These 5 days with you have been significant, important in ways I am still processing. I did not wish to lose that connection when maintaining it was possible. I didn't want to lose it either, Ethan admitted. That's really why I'm here. Not the adventure or the access to Velkari culture or any rational reason. Just because the thought of saying goodbye and never seeing you again felt wrong in ways I couldn't ignore. Her ears angled forward with pleasure and something warmer, and she left him to rest with expression that suggested she understood exactly what he meant. Ethan lay in his quarters aboard a Velkari ship, heading toward hostile territory, having abandoned everything familiar for reasons he couldn't fully articulate. He should be terrified, should be regretting this decision and desperately trying to find way back to his safe, predictable isolation on Theta 7. Instead, he felt anticipation, excitement, the sense that despite all the danger and uncertainty, he'd made exactly the right choice at exactly the right moment. Sometimes the most important decisions were the insane ones. Sometimes the best opportunities came disguised as terrible ideas. Sometimes you had to risk everything safe to discover what was actually worth having. Ethan closed his eyes and let the ship's gentle movement lull him toward sleep, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that at least he wouldn't be facing it alone. Velkari space was nothing like Ethan expected. He'd imagined military installations, harsh security, constant surveillance. What he found instead was beauty that took his breath away, space stations that looked like living things, ships that moved with organic grace, Technology integrated so seamlessly with natural systems that distinguishing between built and grown was impossible. "This is extraordinary," he told Kaya as their ship approached the primary station in her sector. "Human engineering looks primitive by comparison. How did you achieve this level of biotechnological integration?" "Centuries of development driven by necessity rather than ambition. After near extinction, my people learned to work with living systems rather than against them. Our technology grows, adapts, responds to needs rather than requiring constant maintenance and replacement." She was piloting with obvious skill, the ship responding to her thoughts as much as her hands. "You will have opportunity to study our methods if you survive first contact with command. Try not to appear too interested. Enthusiasm for our technology reads as espionage intent to paranoid military minds." The station they docked at was enormous, a constructed ecosystem that housed thousands of Velkari military and civilian personnel. Kaya led him through corridors that pulsed with bioluminescent light, past beings who stopped and stared at the human walking freely among them. Ethan kept his expression neutral and his eyes forward, very aware that he was probably the first human most of these people had seen in person. The command center was intimidating. High-ranking officers in elaborate uniforms, their long ears angled in expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Kaya addressed them in formal Velkari that Ethan's translator rendered in stiff, ritual phrases about life debt and obligation and protection rights. The responses came fast and sharp, questioning, challenging, demanding explanation for why reconnaissance pilot had brought enemy species into secure military installation. Kaya stood firm, her ears angled with determination that matched her commanding officers, citing precedents and protocols and her right under Velkari law to claim protection over someone who preserved her life. The debate lasted over an hour. Ethan stood silently, understanding perhaps one word in three even with translation assistance, watching Kaya defend his presence with passionate intensity. Finally, the highest-ranking officer, ancient Velkari whose ears bore scars suggesting long military career, raised a hand for silence. "The human may stay," he said in heavily accented standard, addressing Ethan directly for first time. "But understand this. You exist here by Kaya's protection alone. You have no independent rights, no freedom to travel without escort, no authority to access our systems or data. You are tolerated guest, not accepted ally. One violation of our protocols, one suggestion of espionage or hostile intent, and life debt protection becomes irrelevant. Do you understand?" "Completely, sir," Ethan said, keeping his voice respectful. "I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and will abide by all restrictions and protocols. I have no hostile intent, only genuine interest in learning about Velkari culture and perhaps helping bridge misunderstandings between our peoples." "Naive," the officer said, but his ears angled with something that might have been approval. "But honest naivety is preferable to calculated deception. You may remain. Kaya, he is your responsibility. His failures reflect on you. His successes, should any occur, redound to your credit. This is traditional arrangement for life debt protection. Accept or release him to detention pending deportation." "I accept full responsibility," Kaya said without hesitation. "He is mine to protect and guide. His actions are my burden and my honor." Months passed in strange suspension between acceptance and rejection. Kaya was right. Velkari society was complex, ritualistic, unforgiving of cultural violations. Ethan spent weeks learning proper greetings, appropriate behavior around different ranks, the hundreds of subtle social cues that meant everything to people who prized order and protocol. He also discovered that Velkari were not the hostile paranoids human intelligence described. They were cautious, yes, protective of their culture and territory, absolutely, but also curious, intelligent, capable of changing opinions when presented with evidence that challenged assumptions. And slowly, gradually, some began treating him as individual rather than enemy representative. He worked in engineering, applying his skills to problems Velkari approached differently. Learned their biotechnology methods with fascination that he carefully tempered to avoid appearing like spy. Contributed ideas that sometimes were adopted, sometimes rejected, but always considered fairly. Made something approaching friends among younger Velkari who were less rigid about species boundaries than their elders. And he spent time with Kaya, far more time than his protected status strictly required. She was often assigned as his escort for security reasons, but they both knew the real reason was that they enjoyed each other's company. Conversations that lasted hours, shared meals where they compared their people's customs, quiet evenings in her quarters or his, comfortable in silence that needed no filling. "Do you regret it?" Kaya asked one evening 6 months into his stay. They were in her quarters, reviewing survey data she was teaching him to analyze using Velkari methods. "Coming with me, leaving your post, choosing uncertainty over the safety of your survey work." "Every day," Ethan said honestly, setting aside the data to meet her eyes. "I regret the career I abandoned, the contract I broke, the comfortable isolation I gave up. I regret not knowing if I can ever return to human space without facing legal consequences. I regret the friends and family I left behind without proper explanation. Every single day I regret something about this decision." Her ears flattened with distress. "Then perhaps you should." "And not at all," he interrupted. "I also don't regret it even slightly. Because being here, learning your culture, seeing your people as they actually are rather than as intelligence briefings describe, working with technology that makes human engineering look primitive, all of that is worth the regrets. And spending time with you, getting to know you beyond crisis circumstances, being your friend and possibly something more if we both chose it, that's worth every sacrifice I made to be here." Her ears shot up with surprise and pleasure. "Something more?" she asked quietly. "You would consider. Velkari human bonding is not impossible, but it is unprecedented. Our physiologies are compatible, but our cultures are vastly different. And I am still your protector under life debt law, which complicates any potential romantic relationship with power dynamics that—" "Kaya," Ethan interrupted gently. "I've spent 6 months watching you defend me, teach me, include me in your world despite constant pressure to simply deport me and be done with the complication I represent. You've been patient, kind, honest about your culture's flaws while still valuing its strengths. You challenge me intellectually, make me laugh with your dry observations about human irrationality, and make me feel valued in ways I haven't experienced before. If you're asking whether I have feelings for you beyond friendship, the answer is yes. Definitely yes. But I also understand if life debt protection makes romance impossible or inappropriate." "It doesn't," she said, moving closer with visible decision. "Life debt creates responsibility, not prohibition. And I have feelings for you as well, have had them since you saved me despite every reason to let me die. Since you treated enemy with kindness and changed my understanding of what humans could be. I wanted to ask you to come with me not only because I valued our intellectual connection, but because I valued you personally and wanted opportunity to explore whether survival bond could become something deeper." "And can it," Ethan asked, "become something deeper?" "I believe so," Kaya said, taking his hands in hers. "If you're willing to accept that relationship with me means navigating Velkari cultural expectations around partnership that are different from human norms, means facing continued suspicion from those who see human Velkari bonding as betrayal of species loyalty, means building something unprecedented without clear models for how it should work. I've been navigating unprecedented territory since the moment you crashed into my habitat during a storm," Ethan said, pulling her closer. "I think I can handle unprecedented romance too." She kissed him then, carefully, tentatively, like she wasn't entirely sure how human Velkari physical affection should work. Ethan kissed back, and they figured it out together, and it was awkward and wonderful and exactly right despite all the ways it shouldn't work. Years later, Ethan still didn't have simple answer when people asked if he regretted his decision. Life in Velkari space remained challenging. He was always outsider, always watched, always aware he existed on borrowed time that could be revoked if his presence became too controversial. He couldn't return to human space without facing consequences for broken contract. He lived in culture that wasn't his, learning customs that sometimes made no sense, building life in place he never intended to be. But he had Kaya, brilliant, caring, challenging partner who made every difficulty worthwhile, had work he found meaningful, had perspective on human Velkari conflict that neither side possessed, making him valuable as informal advisor on rare occasions when both peoples attempted dialogue. Had life that was complicated and uncertain, but never boring, never empty, never the isolated existence he'd been settling for before Storm forced him to choose different path. Do you regret it? Kaya asked sometimes, the question becoming ritual between them. Every day, Ethan always answered, and not at all. Contradictory human. Accurate assessment. He pulled her close, comfortable in their shared space that was neither human nor Velkari but something they'd built together. Thank you for crashing into my habitat during that storm, for asking me to come with you, for giving me choice between safe isolation and uncertain connection. Best storm I ever survived. Thank you for saving me, for accepting my invitation despite very reasonable concerns about survival and sanity, for choosing possibility over certainty. Her ears angled forward with contentment. Best crash landing I ever experienced, though I recommend we avoid repeating it. Agreed. One desperate survival bonding per lifetime is sufficient. They sat together in quarters aboard station that was slowly, grudgingly accepting human presence as part of their reality. Building future neither had planned but both had chosen, proving that sometimes best decisions started with storms and ended with unexpected love that transcended species and culture, and every logical reason it shouldn't work. Ethan had survived storm by offering shelter. Kaya had survived it by accepting help from enemy, and both had survived the aftermath by choosing connection over isolation, possibility over safety, each other over everything familiar. It was enough, more than enough everything.